Motion 13. Motion 13 aims to update the language on page 13 of the Guide to World Services. The motion maker is the World Service Board. The intent of this motion is to make the wording on page 13 consistent with the wording in the floor motion criteria section, which states, quote, "Motions to change existing conference-approved recovery literature that are not for the purpose of correcting errors will be ruled out of order," end quote. If this motion is approved, the first paragraph under the table on page 13 would contain the same wording as the floor motion criteria section regarding motions to change existing conference-approved recovery literature. There would be no financial impact.
Motion 14, submitted by the World Service Board, removes the vote of the World Service Board chair at the conference. The World Service Board members were given the vote years ago when there were few regions and even fewer delegates coming to the conference and voting. In 2023, the vote was restricted to only the chair of the World Service Board in order to ensure that votes from board members did not disproportionately contribute to decision-making at the conference. Today, there are many more regions established, and with the conference held in a virtual format, more regions can send delegates to the conference. If passed, this motion will place the delegates at the helm of decision-making at the conference, directly representing the conscience of the member in their regions in the votes that they cast. There's no financial impact expected if this motion passes.
Motion 15. Motion 15 extends the deadline for members to apply for service on the World Service Board, WSB, from October 31 of the year prior to the World Service Conference to January 31 of the conference year. The motion maker is the World Service Human Resource Committee. If approved, this motion would provide members with several additional months to apply for service on the WSB. No major financial impact is anticipated as a result of passing this motion. Motion 16. Motion 16 seeks to establish a group of 3 facilitators to serve on any World Service Conference event. The motion maker is Southern Region, Russia. The intent is to resolve conflicts through the group conscience of facilitators. If passed, this motion would add a paragraph to the Guide to World Services, page 21, that would read as follows, quote, "A group of 3 facilitators is formed to serve on any World Service Conference event. 1 facilitator presides over the business meeting of the conference. Others form the group conscience of conference facilitators to resolve issues during the conference business meetings by the spiritual means of Nar-Anon program." End quote. This motion, if passed, would also allow a greater number of Nar-Anon members to be of service and to acquire conference experience.
Motion 17 calls for revisions on page 25 of the Guide to World Services in the section Development and Approval Process for New Service and Outreach Literature/Materials, making changes in the first and second paragraphs of that section. The motion maker is the World Service Board. The motion clarifies the process of the role of the World Service Board and the World Service Policy and Guidelines Committees in reviewing the new service materials, making it clear that materials should be sent first to the World Service Board, who will send it on to the Policy and Guidelines Committee after the board has reviewed it. In the rationale, there is an explanation that some new service projects were sent to the World Service Board and the Policy and Guidelines Committee at the same time, causing confusion. Therefore, this motion is made to make it clear what the correct procedures should be. This motion does not change how service literature is created or approved. It simply makes our service manual easier to understand. If this motion is approved, this section of the Guide to World Service will be updated. Motion 18 requests an update to the section in the Guide to World Services regarding the copyright and trademark information to add World Service committees to the list of committees that can reproduce, reprint, or republish conference-approved literature, CAL, not to exceed 25%. The Outreach Committee explains in their rationale that the original intent of the guidelines was not to exclude World Service committees. They further explain that this revision of the Guide to World Service will clarify that the Outreach Committee's posting of portions of conference-approved literature on the Nar-Anon Instagram account does follow the guidelines listed in the Guide to World Services, which committees should follow regarding using quotes or reprinting portions of Nar-Anon and Nar-Ateen conference-approved literature. The Outreach Committee further states that the Instagram account and postings were approved by the World Services Board, WSB. If this motion is approved, the words "or World Service committees" will be added to the list of committees mentioned in this section. There is no financial impact.
Motion 19 expands on the eligibility requirements for members of the World Service Board and adds in service as a chair on a World Service Committee. Currently, service as a region or area officer or a delegate or alternate delegate is required for members wishing to be considered for election to the board. Members who chair a World Service Committee have a working knowledge of serving at the world level and can bring to the board the expertise related to their specific area of service. Adding in this additional service position as an eligibility requirement increases the potential pool of members available to serve on the World Service Board. This motion was submitted by the members of the World Service Human Resources Committee, who screen candidates applying to the World Service Board and forward their applications for consideration at the World Service Conference. There is no anticipated financial impact if this motion is passed. Motion 20 was submitted by the World Service Board and clarifies the description of a national service organization, NSO, and its roles, with a particular focus on the translation and distribution of conference-approved literature, or CAL. An NSO is the administrative headquarters of Nar-Anon within a country outside of the United States. Motion 20 clarifies that the World Service Organization, WSO, is responsible for recognizing NSOs that meet the criteria established by the WSO. This motion also adds the requirement that, in addition to regular reports to the National Service Board and National Service Conference, the NSO also regularly reports on its activities to the World Service Board. NSO's contract with the corporate office of Nar-Anon, NFGH Incorporated, to print and distribute translated CAL. The bylaws of NFGH Inc. require the World Service Board to safeguard the assets of Nar-Anon, and CAL is Nar-Anon's only asset. Therefore, this motion is intended to ensure that the activities of the NSO related to CAL are consistent with the bylaws of the corporation. Requiring regular reporting of the NSO to the World Service Board brings this portion of the Guide to World Services into alignment with the requirements of the bylaws. Motion 20 also clarifies that NSOs with printing contracts may translate, print, and distribute the authorized PDF versions of CAL available on the Nar-Anon website to members in the contracted countries. For example, the NSO in Russia could distribute Russian translations of CAL to Russian-speaking members in Moscow, but not to Russian-speaking members in countries outside of the NSO, such as the United States or countries in Europe. Finally, this motion adds that NFGH Inc. will make approved electronic versions of translated literature available through secure ebook and audiobook platforms, which will allow members living outside of the physical boundaries of the NSO to access translated CAL in electronic form. Printed translations of CAL will be available for sale on the Nar-Anon web store. If Motion 20 is passed, translated CAL will be more broadly available to members worldwide via electronic media, and the operations of the NSOs will be more in line with the requirements of NFGH Inc. bylaws. Although no financial impact was stated in the motion, it is possible that making translated CAL available to more members will increase revenues from literature sales.
Motion 21 describes time limits for the process where local translation committees work with the World Service Translations Resource Committee to review translated literature. If the proposed change is added to the Guide to World Services, each committee will have 1 month to do their part as the literature moves back and forth between these two committees. If each part of the review is completed on schedule, the process for approving translations of literature can be reduced to between 3 to 6 months. The intent of this motion is to define the length of time it should take for a translation to be approved. The rationale is that this change will make it easier to get more translated literature to members. Motion 22 proposes a change to the Guide to World Services to specifically say that members who are working with local translation committees can also join the World Service Translations Resource Committee. The intent of this motion is to clarify something that is not currently stated in the Guide to World Services. The rationale is that this change will make it easier to get more translated literature to members.
Motion 23 was written by the Service Structure Development Ad Hoc Committee. This committee is asking permission to continue its work until the end of the World Service Conference Cycle 2027. This committee was created at the Interim World Service Conference 2024 to assist those in service and to grow our fellowship. It is scheduled to dissolve in 2025. If this motion passes, this ad hoc committee would be able to continue its work for an additional 2 years, promoting communication amongst regions and strengthening our service structure.
Motion 24. This motion requests the World Service Conference to elect an ad hoc committee chair to form a committee to explore ways to increase and improve two-way communication within Nar-Anon. If this motion is approved, a report with suggestions and options will be shared at the WSC 2027.